Welcome to Grid Talk. My name is George Howson, and today we are here to preview the 2025 British Grand Prix. Joining me today, we have Grid Talk's Owain Medford,
Hello.
Kristen Horvath,
Hello.
and F1 historian Alex Booth.
Hello.
So yeah, British Grand Prix coming up this weekend. Always an eventful one at Silverstone. The fans will no doubt be out in force. This was, of course, the home of the first ever Formula One World Championship Grand Prix all the way back in 1950, and we're still racing at the former RAF base to this day. Kristin, what are your favourite memories of Silverstone over the years? This has hosted every British Grand Prix since about 1987, I do believe, and a lot before that, on and off as well.
I'm going to say mine are more recent in the past couple of years, and by far last year was my favorite. To watch Lewis Hamilton come and win as the rain, played a major role in the race last year. We had so many different leaders, from Lando to I think Charles even was in there, and everything was just happening. It seemed like all at once in the whole race. It was like, okay, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Is Lando going to take it? And is George going to go? And then all of a sudden, Lewis grabs it, and to hear his emotion, because as we know, Mercedes really was not doing that well at that point. And to have him just come in and get this win the last year with his team at his home race, and to hear his emotion and, to see him give his mom and his dad, just big hugs afterwards, and the crowd going crazy. Like, it was epic, really. I loved last year's race. And the last 3 years really have been great, with Max, the year before, winning his 11th race in a row, I think that was, and taking his win there at Silverstone. And the year before, Carlos taking it. You can just go down the line, and so many races seem so epic to me. I love this track. I love this race. And, weather pending, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year's race was very emotional. It's not very often I get emotional watching Formula One, but that was definitely a Murray Walker and Damon Hill moment. Got a lump in my throat because it was emotional seeing Hamilton win for the 9th time around the British Grand Prix. No one's ever done that around any race in Formula One history before. And even he said on the radio, he was doubting himself. He thought he couldn't do it anymore. And he did it, You never know. We could see something special like that. Again, there is always a storyline at Silverstone. There's always something that you don't expect to happen. Expect the unexpected, and that applies to the weather as well. And it is meant to rain on the Sunday as things stand. You never guess it right now here in the UK. It's absolutely boiling, but according to the forecast, it is meant to rain at the weekend. So we'll see what happens there. Owain, what are your favourite moments from Silverstone over the years?
I'm glad you didn't ask sort of like memorable moments, because then I would have had to say at least maybe 2013 or something like that. But I think probably my favourite memory, it's a bit bittersweet in some ways, is that 2020 win. I think that was the British Grand Prix, not the anniversary Grand Prix, or maybe I've got it the wrong way around. I don't necessarily remember, but just the drama in those last few laps, with obviously Lewis Hamilton coming in, 3 wheels on his wagon, that front left completely deflated, and just the way that it sort of unfolded, seeing Bottas first, and with the issue a couple of laps before, maybe Lewis being in clear air helped him during that time, but the fact that even just the imagery of Lewis coming down the hangar straight, and just you saw just Max Verstappen having pit for soft tyres back when we had fastest lap points, at least, just flashing through and being told by GP how big the gap was. That was, and I know it was a much larger sort of gap at the end than we maybe thought it was, but it almost came down to the wire. But yeah, it was I think it's probably one of my favourite memories of just like him just scraping through and taking that win. Unfortunately, obviously they couldn't repeat it the following weekend, as it got hotter and the tyres got softer. But I think that was really one of the heart and mouth moments for the British Grand Prix.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you just didn't think is possible. Someone winning the Formula One race with 3 wheels on the rocket, but Hamilton's done that. So just an incredible set of circumstances there. But yeah, I mean, for the longest time, Alex, it's always seen as though the British Grand Prix has been on the edge of being off the calendar. Silverstone's struggling for money. They've not got enough to get a contract extension. But thankfully, maybe it's just a bit of British bias, for lack of a better term, but thankfully it seems as though those worries have gone away. It seems a bit more secure now in its future. And I think the recent races have really helped with that. But what about the historic races as well? Because this is a track that's had so many throughout the decades.
Well, I fear that I'm going to repeat what I said on the show like this time last year, but my British Grand Prix memories is a very personal one because my very first one was 1998, and because I was there for the qualifying, and I was 4 years of age. That was the way the love affair with Grand Prix racing started. I don't remember much of it, obviously from me, so but I do remember Ralph Schumacher spinning because we were at the Old Abbey chicane, and then clouded the wheels up and then couldn't get going again. But so that was the very first one. My favourite British Grand Prix would probably be 2003 when the crazy Irish priest ran onto the track, which wasn't a very good moment for Formula One, I must admit. It did indeed spice the. Well, to be fair, the race would have probably been interesting anyway because it was just getting good up until then. But that completely screwed everyone's strategy up because the safety car came out. And we had the two Toyotas leading the race. Christian D'Amato in the Toyota, he was the reigning champ car champion at the time. He led for something like 20 or something. So that was a bit of a left field leader of the race. And then Rubens Barrichello drove the race of his life because he'd had a really bad start, but ended up winning the race. And it was just because people used to criticise Formula One a lot back then for not a lot of overtaking, but there was more overtaking in that race than there had been, I think, the entire season until that point. So yeah, that for me is my personal favourite British.
Yeah, 2003, a fantastic season in general as well. Very, very competitive was that one. And we're seeing quite a bit of competitive right now as well, of course. But there is an absolute standout when it comes to performances recently, not least, of course, in the last race in Austria, Kristin. McLaren haven't won around Silverstone since 2008. I had to double check this. It's been that long since Hamilton won in the pouring rain, one of my favourite races ever in Formula One history. Still probably his best ever win. Definitely up there without a doubt. They were absolutely dominant in Austria. Are we expecting more of the same this weekend for the home race?
I think so, especially, it sounds like they're going to have some upgrades also, and they're going to introduce another new rear wing, so they can have the downforce that they need and take those turns the way they need to. We've had Lando, have the lead of this race so many times in the past several years. The question really is which one of them, between Lando and Oscar is going to be in the lead the most during this race. I have a feeling they are very dominant right now, and their pace is far above everybody else. Even though it was nice to see Ferrari where they landed this last race in Austria, but will they have that pace to keep up with them? Will any of them have the pace to keep up with them? We don't know. And it's weather, but other things can take a factor. But McLaren is just so dominant right now. So we know Lando probably wants this more than anything right now, being his home race and everything. And I believe he has his own section at the racetrack, of all his Lando fans that are going to be there. So I really do think it's McLaren's to lose right now. And the world championship is still up in the air. And will McLaren allow these two drivers to race each other? Again, what are going to be the papaya rules? They allowed it last time, and it's great to see. And I hope they continue to do that. So, yeah, it's Lando's to lose, but it's Oscar's to gain. I guess that's the best way for me to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, excuse me, I think they will let him fight for, basically just same as they did in Austria, just let them do what they got to do. If something goes over the line, like they said on the radio, with Piastri's move, then they'll probably say something, but I think they'll let him fight, to be honest. And this is a track that you can see them really, really fight. I mean, 2022 in particular, we saw so many incredible side-by-side battles. I wouldn't rule out something like that between a lot of the field, and in particular those two McLarens up front, because, yeah, Norris has had opportunities. He's come close many times before in the last 2 years. He's led at different points in the race, and it's just not quite come together for him in the end. It was a very positive result for him last time out in Austria for sure, Owain, but he needs to keep this momentum going. And a win at his home race, he's going to be desperate for this. But as cool and calm as a customer as Piastri is as well, I bet he'd really love to win this almost as much as Lando, to be honest with you, just to kind of stop that momentum that he's got now after Austria.
Yeah, you don't want to lose, you don't want to lose an inch to your teammate particularly. And I think it's a race that, clearly we saw last year, particularly with the rain. The McLaren went well, and it is still the class of the field. I think also just due to that I think both drivers seem to sort of be in their element. And as much as, Piastri's not going to want to, let Norris back in the door here, I think Norris has got a good chance as well. I think they're sort of basically evenly matched. That's why they're allowed to race so hard. And clearly they do seem to, despite some of the issues that we were seeing in the past, they are allowed and capable of racing without running into each other. I think that's going to set up for an exciting race. With Silverstone's characteristics mean that you can take multiple lines through the corners, you can vary things up a bit. Some other strategies do work just due to the tyre deg. Maybe that'll be sort of taken away a little bit as an option, what with there being rain on the cards, although some of the forecasts I've seen don't have it, some of them do, so classically it'll be pretty unpredictable. And yeah, it's like 2024 all over again. But Piastri, absolutely, whatever happens, will not be wanting to give Norris a way back into this championship. It's 15 points between them and he wants it to stay there. It's nice to have a one race, a 25-point buffer. And obviously you can't do that this weekend, but he wants to stretch that as much as possible. You never want to let your championship rival back in. You always want to keep that scoreboard ticking over for the championship table. And I think that, obviously Piastri's gonna work super hard to make sure that he doesn't get out qualified and he's able to maintain his advantage and control the race from the front. I think that gives them the most options, and obviously that's the kind of thing you want to do if you want to undercut or at least have the ability to overcut. It's not fun to follow here, and you just want to have every single as many arrows in your quiver as you can have.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it is changeable conditions in terms of the weather, McLaren hopefully will learn from their mistakes of last year, because they well and truly didn't do a good job on the strategy with that one. But of course, you got another year older, another year wiser when it comes to that. And when it comes to the results of a certain Mr. Hamilton, someone who literally has a part of the circuit named after him, Alex, his record around Silverstone is absolutely ridiculous. I mentioned the fact that he's won 9 times here, but he's also finished on the podium on every single of the last 11 Grand Prix, going all the way back to 2014. And yes, a lot of the time he has had the best car at that, but he's also a lot of the time not had the best car as well. Right now, though, that Ferrari's looking pretty good. They look comfortable with the second fastest team in Austria, really. And obviously, quite a way off of McLaren, but still big improvement. It's a high-speed circuit is Austria. It's a high-speed circuit is Silverstone. So Hamilton on the podium, do you think?
I think that's possible. Yeah, I wouldn't rule it out. And I think it would probably be typical, I suppose, with it being Silverstone, for him to get the podium finish at the British Grand Prix, similar as was the case last year with the first victory in a long time at Silverstone. So I think it's possible, but first and foremost, he needs to beat Leclerc if that's going to happen. And we know Leclerc needs no introduction of how good a racing driver he is. So he needs to qualify him and outrace him if that's the case. Unless Leclerc has a retirement, which knowing Ferrari's look in the past is not out of the question either. So yeah, I think it's possible to see Lewis on the podium. A win a bit unlikely. That would need a great deal of luck, I think. But I think a third place is quite realistic.
Yeah, it's definitely on the cards without a doubt. And Leclerc's had his fair share of bad luck over the years at Silverstone. He's had some really good results here. I remember he dragged an absolute dog of a Ferrari to podium finish in 2020, I want to say, something like that. So
yeah, he did, yeah.
He's pretty good round here too, so it's positive for Ferrari. And Kristin, they've just got the advantage right now in the Constructors' Championship. They are a grand total of 1 point ahead of Mercedes in second place. It is tight between those two, of course. And it's interesting because, Hamilton is the winner from the previous year, but of course he did do that in a Mercedes. So how do you see that battle between those two kind of shaping out this weekend?
Oh my gosh. Well, and then I think of the troubles that George has had on this track also, in the past couple of years. It's going to be a good battle, I believe, between the two of those. It's going to be really interesting to see, how Kimi does on this track for sure after, coming off an unfortunate DNF, there in Austria. But if he can keep his head on, as a rookie and help George. I still think Ferrari, though. I think Ferrari is going to outdo Mercedes, actually, this weekend. It's just my gut level feeling, no scientific facts behind it or anything. And I think Mercedes will be, right there on their tails as well, which is going to make for some great racing, as well. And we've seen cars run off the tracks here, and we've seen, that happen. Well, was it Verstappen and Hamilton on this track back in 21. We've seen some disastrous, unfortunate incidents on this track, actually. And you never hope for that to happen or anything, but you just don't know what can happen. But I think Ferrari is ready to overtake Mercedes. And I think Lewis, just has something about this track in him, whatever car he's in, that comes out. And I love the way he drives this track. And you're right, he does have to get ahead of Leclerc, but I think Ferrari is really going to do it this race.
Yeah, we'll see. I think a lot depends on the weather, to be honest. And again, anybody who lives in the UK knows how unpredictable it is. But it is saying on the one I've just looked at, again, it's going to be rainy and relatively cold by F1 standards, 20 degrees Celsius. So that is usually Mercedes territory. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting for sure. And if you guys are enjoying listening or watching this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you head it over to Spotify or Apple Music and gave us a 5-star review on there. It would really, really help us out. And if you're listening, you're not currently subscribed to our YouTube channel as well, please head over there and you can get all the latest updates on everything going on in terms of episodes being recorded, and if we're going to a certain F1 movie, and potentially getting some updates as well on the review that we're going to do with that as well at some point, most likely. But yeah, let's talk now about Red Bull. They are an Austrian team, so they had their home race last time out, but they're based just up the road relatively in Milton Keynes from Silverstone. So it's kind of a home race for them, home race for most of their mechanics back in the factory, but it was an absolutely torrid time for them last time out in Austria, Owain. Tsunoda basically had an absolutely shocking race, 2 laps down, causing all kinds of trouble, and Verstappen didn't even make it round half of the lap. Kimi Antonelli, unfortunately, basically just plowing into the side of him, ended his race very, very quickly. They'll be really hoping to bounce back with this one because they really need it. They're becoming very quickly cut adrift of Mercedes and Ferrari in that constructors' battle right now.
Yeah, it's a massive problem for Red Bull. I think this is going to be a better weekend for them, but we did say that with Austria. It's a bit of a freak accident that's caused obviously what happened, and you wouldn't have even expected Verstappen to be where he was. The fact that the yellow flag came out on his last run did just stop him being able to qualify better, but very clearly, the performance that he's put in, as much as it's, as you always get the best from Verstappen, but the car's not up to it, and they're left in a situation, obviously, where I think Nico Hülkenberg has scored as many points, as just in the last sort of few races as Red Bull's last three second drivers have. It's really, really difficult when you're obviously fourth in the constructors and you've only got that single driver who's been able to do things for you. Obviously Tsunoda will be hoping for a better weekend, as will the rest of the team for him, regardless of what they'd want to do with their with their driver situation. It's not a tenable scenario to continue to have a driver so far down. I mean, just looking at the championship standings, we're sitting there with Yuki Tsunoda. The only people ahead of are a Haas and a couple of a couple of drivers who for Alpine, that and Bortoletto. And I rapidly think that they're getting to the point where those, at least Bortoletto and Behrman, can both score more points than him, possibly at this race. It's got to the point where I don't necessarily even know what the characteristics of strength are for the Red Bull. Obviously, they're quite good in the high speed, so you'd expect them to go around here well enough, even just because, for example, the fact that, this track is known so well to the teams. They come here for any shakedowns they've got to do, tyre tests, filming days. It's well known to them, but they are sort of, you're resting on your laurels and just being a decent operationally, which is something that Red Bull does seem that they're falling away at. So I still think it's going to be a difficult weekend, and it's a bit. I don't want to hinge everything on it, but I think they're in a very, very sticky situation both now and going forward, and it's going to cause issues. This has got to be there's got to be sort of fracturing the team internally of which way are we going, and it very clearly looks like they're going backwards. Yeah, it needs to be a good result, and they're going to have to rely a bit on some Verstappen magic and just giving the as much support as they can to Yuki to try and get this car in a window where he can extract performance out of it. As currently, as we sort of saw last weekend, where they're heading isn't good enough, particularly if Verstappen were to leave.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we used to joke about Red Bull being a one-man team when Sergio Perez was there a few seasons ago, but It almost is a one-man team at the moment. 155 of Red Bull's 162 points have been scored by Max Verstappen this season. 0 for Lawson, 7 for Yuki Tsunoda. It's really bad reading. It's really bad. I like Yuki, I really do, but it is not working out right now. Just not just with a lack of pace, but also just any kind of consistency or control in that car. He's not doing good at all. But Alex, despite the struggles of Red Bull, you can't really rule out Max Verstappen for challenging near the front. Although, historically, this is not that good of a track for him. He's only won here twice. He's only won the British Grand Prix once. He won the 70th anniversary Grand Prix as well, I do believe. So, by his standards, that's quite poor. But this track, in theory, should be good for him in the Red Bull.
Well, I always say write him off at your peril because obviously we know how good he is. No, I completely agree with everything that's been said. I mean, the Red Bull was very strong around Suzuka in Max's hands at least, and I think Silverstone has similar characteristics to Suzuka. So it was possible. It was second in Canada. So I think it's not unlikely that he would be fighting for the victory. But with regards to Yuki Tsunoda, I think we were talking about Red Bull being a one-man team. It's been a one-man team since Daniel Ricciardo announced he was leaving for Renault in 2018, frankly. So, and I'm going to get a lot of criticism for saying that, but it's true.
It's hard to disagree with it, Alex. I do laugh, but it has mostly been, it's been at least an 80-90% man team for the most part. That second seat is cursed. I've said it for a long, long time, but it just is. Whoever goes in there, no matter what they've done before, they just struggle. That car is just so hard to drive. And as I think Owain's mentioned a few times on the show in the past, what happens if Verstappen leaves? You've got to, what is it? I'm not too clued up on MotoGP, but it feels a bit like Marc Marquez leaving Honda or whatever it was. Like after that, you get rid of that guy. It's like, what do we do? We've made a bike or a car in this case that only one guy can drive and he's left. But we'll see what happens there. But yeah, it's been a bad race for Red Bull last time out in their home race, but it's been a bad run for Williams as well, Kristin. We were saying not too long ago they are comfortably in fifth, no problem, no real threat from behind, but how the tables have turned, the pressure is ranking up. I mean, it's 19 points between them and RB, who are in sixth, but that gap is closing. Lawson got sixth last time out. Haas is scoring points pretty consistently. Aston Martin is scoring pretty consistently. Sauber have actually scored more points in the last 3 races than Red Bull. I haven't double-checked that, but I did hear that stat the other day, which sounds unbelievable, but it shows how competitive that part of the field is. Williams, not only because it's their home race, but they really need a good result this weekend.
Yeah, especially coming out of a DNS and a DNF, in Austria, unfortunately. And I am such a huge Williams fan. And James Valls has announced that he's staying with the team, and that's exciting and great. And they just, I don't know what's happening, but if I do know anything, just the way James talks, about everything that comes up, he's going to find why it happened, and then he's going to find a solution, and then he's going to empower his whole team to fix it. And we have seen growth, even though there's been some disastrous situations that have been happening, but I still have great faith. Sure, we've seen Carlos, win around this track, but that was in a different car, but he's still an incredible driver. Let's not forget that. What's happening to him and his car is not who he is right now. They're just rebuilding and growing and having some pains along the way as they're doing it. But I hold faith, that they are going to continue to head in the right direction. And it does show how close that part of the field is right there. And they can't have this continue to happen, or they will continue to slide down to the bottom. But I have faith in how that team has had an upward momentum as well. So here's hoping that they're going to do better than they did, at the last race, and that will continue a momentum.
I hope so. Frankly, it'd be hard to do worse, but I hope they do.
That, but yes.
Unfortunately, it's true. It's been a bad run of races for him for sure. 1 point in the last 3 Grand Prix, just as a lot of their rivals have started picking up points pretty consistently. But we'll see what happens. Then one of the many, many home teams here, and the true home team of Silverstone are Aston Martin. They're literally based in Silverstone itself. They've been picking up some points recently. Some good results for them overall. Aston Martin. There we go. I've got to ask Alex about this as well now. He's whipped the hat on. But but yeah, it's been a really good run in the last few races for Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso finally getting on top of that car. He's finally able to fight. Now we can fight. He can fight now, which is great. You know, a lot of people writing them off saying they weren't really going to improve much for the remainder of the season, but it seems like things are working out. I'm sure it's not that much to do with Adrian Newey. I'm sure he is, of course, working on the 26 car rather than this one, but Owain, they seem to finally be optimizing that package for once.
Yeah, they actually did really well in Austria. Yeah, we kind of didn't expect it. I think, yeah, you know what? I don't know whether it's come from sort of familiarity or the fact that they've just managed to sort of, you know, pull it together and have a better run of results. But the fact is that, you know, over the last few races, they've managed to sort of pull something out of the bag a bit more. It's, you know, more so with Alonso than Stroll, which is, you know, it is what it is. But you would take it because they're like we keep saying they are in a pretty tight midfield battle, but they keep pulling out decent results, and you know, because of that, I think it's going to continue. I think, you know, maybe I hazard a guess that they've made some upgrades to the car. That would make sense, given the sort of European legs of the season, or you know, we can't say it's sort of the traditional Spain upgrades because obviously it comes much later in the season now. But the fact is that they have moved forward, and I think that, you know, similarly to Austria and Canada as well, to be fair, you know, Silverstone is much more similar to those two tracks as well, and I think it can maybe even bring some other benefits in the fact that it's obviously so well known to the teams. The fact is as well, Alonso is clearly going to be able to put one of his best performances forward, as far as I can see, and I think that can only be a positive. I think that's going to work well for them. The only thing they're going to have to worry about is if anyone else raises their game. But it does seem that the tracks that are with sort of similar characteristics of Austria and Canada that we've had just preceding it, obviously it's quite a nice run of circuits. I think that it's actually going to be, you know, I think it's going to be quite a good weekend for them. And obviously, you know, their car characteristics do kind of suit the track. So with that in mind, I can't see it being a bad weekend for at least Alonso, and hopefully Stroll can sort of continue that as well, as much as it might be maybe a bit difficult with the after effects of his injuries, but apparently they're fine.
Yeah, I mean, I still struggle to believe he's all right in that car. His Stroll with that surgery being not long ago, but you got to take his word for it, I suppose. Only he truly knows. But yeah, Silverstone for Aston Martin, Alex. What are you thinking? I mean, I got to give let you get your pointing across after pulling that hat out of nowhere on that one. How do you think they're going to get on? Is Stroll finally going to score some points? Can miracles happen around Silverstone this weekend?
Well, first I'll just say actually my girlfriend's cat. She's an Aston Martin. I think Fernando Alonso can carry on his point streak in Silverstone. Not necessarily in the higher places. I think maybe 9th or 10th, that sort of area. Lance Stroll, I'm not sure. Probably not. I think, well, it's not out of the question, but if Alonso's in the race and he hasn't retired, then it's unlikely that Stroll's going to be the first one to be home across the start line. That's the fairest way I can sum it up. That's what.
Yeah, that's totally fair. We'll see what happens. I'm not expecting too much from Stroll, to be honest. But Alonso, yeah, he's got a chance of points for sure. He's got on top of that car now, which is great to see. But the main thing here is, of course, the predictions. We got to get our predictions in. The league is happening right now. It's intense. It wasn't a good week for me last weekend in Austria. Kristin, what are your predictions for the British Grand Prix this weekend? I want to hear who you're going for. Pole, the top 3 on the podium, and also the bold prediction as well.
Okay. I am going to go Norris on pole. I'm going to go Norris for the win. I'm going to go Hamilton in P2. And I'm going to go Pastri P3. And I will say my bold prediction is that Alonso is going to finish 5th.
Alonso for a top 5. I like that. Owain, same to you.
Right. So for pole, I'm going to go. I'm. You know what? I think that I'm going to go with what I said on the Austria review podcast. I think this has been positive for Ferrari. You know, it was really hot in Austria. They made a big thing of that. And I think it's going to be cooler, which should maybe suit them even more. Watch the upgrade of sort of change things. I think Hamilton's going to get pole. He always does go around Silverstone, and there's a reason that so many of our sort of favourite memories or, you know, exciting moments have involved Hamilton. The guy has won so much around this track, even when, you know, the Mercedes wasn't so good, you know, sort of last year and even the years before, but he still was putting in solid performances. Again, I'm going to put Hamilton for the win. I think it's going to be another one on the tally. Now, the real question is, how do I think the McLarens are going to do? Because I don't think the Mercedes necessarily has it, and I'm not put. You know what? I can't count out Verstappen, but I think it's going to be a third. The guy just seems to be able to. Well, we know he can just extract results out of nothing. He's kind of a magician in that way. Second, I'm going to go for Piastri. I just don't think Norris has it. I hate to say it, but I just think that Piastri is a sort of cooler, calmer operator. And then I'm going to go bouncing back from an awful, awful finish. I'm going to say that Williams are going to be both above, like both sort of 8th and above, if that makes sense.
2 Williams in the top 8 and a 10th British Grand Prix victory for Hamilton. That will be a very popular one if that happens on Sunday. Alex, what are you thinking?
Without wishing to be accused of being British biased.
Not after what Owain just said. I think you'll be fine. Don't worry.
No, I'm going to put for George Russell. I think it's going to be a bit like 2024 all over again because it's going to be cooler temperatures. I think it'll be similar to Canada. I think Mercedes will be strong this weekend. And I'm going to go for George Russell, pole and victory. And even if he wasn't British, I would have said George, I think, because of the car. So that's my prediction. You could stroke that as a bold prediction, I suppose. But I'm going to go... So yeah, I'll go for Russell first. And I think my bold prediction and the podium predictions are going to strike between the two because I'm going to go for Verstappen second. I think that's part of my bold prediction. I don't think McLaren are going to be 1-2 for this weekend. So I think I'm going to go Russell first. Same as Canada, really. Russell first, Verstappen second, Piastri third.
Okay, fair enough. This is difficult to predict. I mean, it should be a good one for McLaren, but historically they have struggled here. Like I said, it's been 17 years since they won here, and they've had some good cars in that time as well, including last year. I find it so hard to go against them for the win, though. That's the thing. I think they will do well. I think they will do well in qualifying, and I'm gonna go Oscar for the pole. I'm gonna go. Yeah, let's do it. I'll go similar to what I did for Austria. I'm gonna go with Piastri to win. I am going to go with Norris in second. I think McLaren just got too much, but I am seeing what you're saying about Russell. It is meant to be wet. It is meant to be cool. Obviously, he was very unlucky last year with a water pump failure or whatever it was. So a bit of a redemption for him to get on the podium. I want to put Hamilton on there. I really do. But Ferrari only seems to do well when it's hot. And it's not meant to be. I mean, typically now it might be 30 degrees. Now I've said that, the weather forecast can change. But as it stands, going on the data that's available to me, that's what I'm thinking. And bold prediction, because nobody's taken it for once, Franco Colapinto in the points. Finally, I get to use that. I've been waiting so long. Someone always takes it, but I'm going for him. But not based on last weekend at all. It was another shocker for Alpine and him as well. But hey, a man can dream. On that note, so Owain, socials time. Where can you find more from Grid Talk?
Yeah, if you'd like to find out more about when episodes are coming out, who's going to be on them, or the rest of our hosts' predictions for what should be, well, what according to our predictions at least, seem to be a very topsy-turvy or just impossible to predict British Grand Prix, then make sure you go to @GridTalkUK on all of the social media platforms with the app. That's where you can find about all new episodes, anything we've, just basically all of our thoughts on the world of F1. That's @GridTalkUK on all the social media platforms with the app.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as competitive as the Formula One World Championship right now is those predictions themselves. It's getting heating up for sure. But yeah, Alex, anything you want to plug before we sign this one off?
Not necessarily a plug, but I think I'm going to start writing again because, well, a one-off thing because July the 17th is the 30th anniversary of the death of the great Juan Manuel Fangio. So I think I might do a small piece on him, the El Maestro. In my opinion, the greatest of all time.
Fair enough, mate. What website would you put that on, by any chance?
Yeah, it'll probably just be on my face.
Oh, okay, fair enough, mate.
But it's welcome to share.
Well, I'll definitely keep an eye out for it. Absolutely, yeah. One of the greatest of all time. May very well be the greatest in a lot of people's eyes. But yeah, if you want to hear and see more from me, you can head over to Formula Reports. Plenty of opinions on the good, the bad, and usually the ugly of Formula One. But yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on this. You can see more from Grid Talk on YouTube, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Cast. Just search for F1 Grid Grid Talk for our big back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to the race results. Thank you so much to Jared, Bradley and Holly Eagle for supporting us on Patreon as well. If you want to support the show further, head over to Patreon for some exclusive content, including our Beyond the Grid Talk podcast, the Patreon exclusive, and we'll also be doing a review of the F1 movie, as quite a few of us did go down to see that at the weekend in IMAX as well, the format it was intended for. So plenty of strong opinions on that, no doubt. And also be sure to subscribe to be the first one to know when we go out with our next weekly episode. And we'll be back soon with plenty more F1 content here on the channel, guys. Thank you very much for listening to the Grid Talk podcast, and goodbye.